but are NFTs just a pyramid scheme?
Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing because we do an extremely poor job as early adopters of this technology to make people from outside don't think it is. Because a lot of the things we do sound pretty much like it, where you put all your information there as a user and they own all of it. And their business basically was to extract as much information from users as possible. What those companies have done, it's incredible and brought us where we are.
Of course.
However, it came with a cost. And now that we are in a better place, now we start understanding and questioning whether that's the future we want the internet to be.
The content that we put out, we can have some ownership over it now instead of having the big social platforms own it. Got it. So that's the key indicator of what Web3 is about.
Digital ownership is now provable, which it wasn't before. And that's the joke within the space where you can right-click save it, right? I can go to your Facebook and right-click save the image of yourself, have the same image that you do. The difference now of the blockchain is that you can prove that you have ownership over it.
Is it unhackable, do you think? Or is it something, or do we just not have the technology to manipulate and hack it now? Hi everyone, I want to welcome my next guest today, Diego Borgo. He is a Metaverse native, a Web3 ambassador, NFT collector, and advisor to Fortune 500 brands. He advises big global brands such as Unilever, L'Oreal, Adidas, Skoda, Salesforce, and many more on how they should enter the Metaverse and NFT space. I am so excited about today's episode. Diego, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I had. So before Diego and I first spoke, I've looked at his LinkedIn, I've been following him. His like resume CV reads like this in the Web3 world is absolutely amazing. Look, I'm really excited about getting to really understand the Web3 world. We are in sort of the digital automation space, so the Web3 for us is really exciting. I'll admit we are really sort of behind on really understanding sort of what the big NFT changes on blockchain tech and Web3 and where we're going with that. So I really want to get your opinion on where everything's going. So let's start, Diego, because a lot of our audiences, normal everyday businesses, even corporates, we don't know what Web3 is. So can you just explain to us what Web3 is and how it differs from where we are today in the Web2 world?
Yeah, like in short, one sentence, Web3 is basically the next iteration of the internet, right? So if you want to sort of like grasp that a little bit more, that's where we are at. And if you want to go deeper, then you need to look back in history, right? So if you look back in history, at the beginning of the internet, we had Web 1, where you can see those frameworks around, and it's quite like well known for now, but the framework goes the following. Web 1 was the place where you could just read. So think about the newspapers, think about not being able to input any information into the internet. That's how Web 1 was, right? So you basically had a way now on which you can consume content, read content from a computer screen connected to the network of the internet. And that's how Web 1 was. As a user, you couldn't do much if not consume. And if you think from a login point of view, is where you had sort of like that. You type the username and you type the password. That's how, Web 1 was.
So Web 1 was like a newspaper's website where you could consume the information they put on that, but that's it. It was a one-way consumption of content. Okay, got it. Web 1.
Exactly. So from there we moved and we evolved, which is a very important word, to Web 2. Where is the internet where we are spending most of our time till today, right? So within that space now you could read, but then you can also write. What does that mean is that now the user can input information into it. So imagine social media is a great example, or back in the day, blogs is a great example. The moments where the sort of like the creator economy was born, the birth of the creator economy is when people could potentially now input information to that, and therefore others could consume content from other users. So that shift was fundamental on that evolution of the internet, which is also called Web 2, where you can now have platforms where users can input and other users can consume, and they can connect, And that's obviously what gave the birth of the social media platforms of so-called creator economy. So that's a fundamental difference from Web 1 to Web 2, and what made it so special, and obviously what put us in a situation where we started as users to input an insane amount of information into the internet. But the main problem here, which we experience and know very well by now, is that we don't own any of this information, right? So you have a middleman platform, we don't need to name them, but you know who they are. You have your face on their books, you know, where you put all your information there as a user, and they own all of it. And their business basically was to extract as much information from users as possible. Therefore, they could sell that for advertisements, to ads, and to build campaigns. Therefore, they could be profitable. So
to be clear, we create the content by posting, yeah, and it sits on their platform, regardless of who these face platforms are, and let's not name them, and they own our data.
Right.
They own our data. They can use our data, and obviously, in recent history, there has been lawsuits and whatnot about controlling and huge privacy kind of issues and concerns coming out of this. That's where we are right now, where we are creating lots and lots of data, but we don't own any of it because it sits on these other platforms, on these social platforms.
Which, don't get me wrong, what those companies have done, it's incredible and brought us where we are.
Course.
However, it came with a cost. And now that we are in a better place, now we start understanding and questioning whether that's the future we want the internet to be, whether, you know, we feel comfortable in being a product rather than owning and being the creator and being able to monetize our own information, our own privacy, be under control of all of it. So on one hand, without obviously the monopoly of those major corporations, we wouldn't have the internet we have today, and we wouldn't be as connected as we are as species. However, now from a philosophical standpoint, we start questioning whether that's how we want to keep going in the future. And that's where we get into Web3. Because basically where we stand with Web3 right now is, again, an evolution of Web 1, where you could read, Web 2, where you could write, and now on Web3 is where you can own that information, right? Or you can own digital assets. So what is really important to look at is that Web3 is an evolution of Web 2 and not a replacement. Where a lot of people are getting it wrong right now. A lot of people are saying, like, yeah, we're going to kill Web 2 and Web3 is the new thing and forget everything about Web 2. That's not how it works. There is an incredible amount of things that were extremely positive within Web 2 that now we need to build on top and find different ways of doing the same that we've done before, but in a manner that now the user has ownership of several different things.
That's fascinating. I get it. So basically, we're now evolving to the content that we put out, we can have some ownership over it now instead of having the big social platforms own it. Got it. So that's the key indicator of what Web3 is about.
And then just to keep building on that. So, you know, within this now so-called Web3, I break that into 3 pillars. So one very important pillar is digital ownership. So it's the first time in history that we as humans will be owning digital assets or representation of physical assets demonstrated in a digital manner, not just the ownership of it, but the proof of ownership, the proof of provenance, the proof of origin, the proof of everything through the blockchain technology. And that's what is exciting, because now the blockchain technology being transparent and immutable, you can now prove that you own something that everybody can see if you want them to see, but nobody can change it because it's on chain. So that's what is interesting about that aspect, right? The second aspect is interoperability, the so famous and so used word around, which is now within the digital space, you'll be able to get thing from A and bring it to B because they are interoperable. You know, if you look back on those siloed platforms we talk about within Web 2, you were not able to bring whatever information you had, for example, per se on Facebook to TikTok. Those are 2 different silos where whatever you would own within those 2 platforms, they don't connect. You can bring them together, right? Within this new space now, that's possible. So think about cryptocurrencies where I have Ethereum and I want to exchange that to Bitcoin. There is a platform where you can swap that and change that to another coin. Therefore, there's interoperability within currencies. But where we're moving forward is that also from a data perspective, because I am a user and now I own my data, there will be interoperability from a user perspective where I can put my data, whatever I want, is not started just in one silo because it's started on the blockchain, which is more sort of like, has more like a flat approach to it rather than a siloed approach. And then the third thing, and the most important thing of it all, is that is permissionless. Instead of me having to ask for access or for permission or be approved, or sometimes take the risk of being shut down because someone decided that I'm doing something that's against whatever rules they decided. And we've seen that throughout, especially the next 2 or 3 years during the pandemic, in the politics, and a lot of places where people have been shut down because of their opinion or point of view, wherever they were talking about, which no matter the side you are, is something that is not necessarily positive. Now, with this technology, is permissionless because you don't need to ask for permission to be part of, and there is no one that is going to control whether you can or cannot be part of it.
So that's fascinating because now it's kind of, it removes all the friction. But let's go on about the ownership part for the time being. For the audience, just explain a little bit about the ownership piece. If I have a piece of content, or if I have a digital asset, whether that's an NFT or whatever it is, how do I how does blockchain assure me that I own that? How do other people know that I own that piece of that digital asset? Just for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get an NFT as an example, because that's kind of like the hot topic and where there's a lot happening right now. So the simplest way I can put an NFT for someone that has never heard of it is it displays and proves digital ownership, right? That's basically how it is, with now an image, with now a sort of like a, let's say, a consumer facing manner, whether that's a photo, whether that is a text, whether that is a video, whether that's whatever it is visually, it proves that you own something. And then if you open the hood and look under it, you'll see that being written on chain. There's a stamp on chain, no matter the chain that's being used. And that stamp proves which wallet is the owner of that specific asset. So it's basically a ledger technology, right? It's not rocket science. It's a ledger technology where you put a stamp saying, now Terry has purchased this NFT at this time from this person. It costed this amount of money. And there's a stamp proof that that person has transferred to this person. Now Terry owns it. And I can go back there and look at it and say, yeah, he does, because that's his wallet. So that's where digital ownership, it gets very interesting, because it's connected to a manner on which anyone can look at it and understand who owns what, who was owning before, who has bought, who has sold, and all of this. Now, if you want to go really down the rabbit hole, everybody's just looking at NFTs right now and thinking that it's just about monkey photos and, Bored apes and stupid JPEGs that are worth millions of dollars. But if you want to go really into the rabbit hole and dig deeper into that sense, you can start looking into how you can bring deeds of houses into chain, that now you can prove ownership of a house, which is a physical item, through a digital piece that now proves that you own that house, or that you own that car, or that you own that piece of art, or that the wine you're buying because you're a collector that costs 20 grand is coming exactly from the supplier, is exactly from that person. So now you have proof of origin, for example, which is a very good way to fight against fake productions or products or counterfeit or any of it. So there's a lot that you can unpack within that space, but in short, digital ownership is now provable, which it wasn't before. And that's the joke within the space, where you can right click, save it, right? I can go to your Facebook and right click, save the image of yourself, have the same image that you do. The difference now of the blockchain is that you can prove that you have ownership over it.
Got it. And just to be clear to the audience, the blockchain technology, the ledger, as it were, is not owned by a private. It is a public ledger that anybody can view on the blockchain. And actually, the reason why it's so powerful is because it requires lots of different parties to confirm and stamp the ownership of that. So, and if somebody changes something in there, the whole chain changes as well, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, it's difficult to manipulate. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you look at like safety, Bitcoin being the biggest proof, 10 years around, has never been hacked. That's what's interesting. There is an incredible amount of interest on hacking Bitcoin, because obviously if you get hold of those coins right now, there's a extremely value behind it.
Sure.
And even though a lot of people have tried, nobody has succeeded so far, which means it's a pretty safe and stable manner on storing data. And especially when you look from an immutable perspective, because you cannot change it. So yeah, as you said, like that's what is exciting. And now when you start looking into adding that into brands or ticketing or art or music or anything, the ownership of those assets digitally is what makes it really exciting, which wasn't possible before.
So you mentioned there before that no one has hacked it yet. Do you feel that, is it unhackable, do you think? Or is it something, or do we just not have the technology to manipulate and hack it now?
I'm really excited and really looking into quantum computing, because if there is a way to do it, and I think that could be it. But I don't know. I'm not like really deep into tech, and I don't know enough of those new technologies to understand whether that will be, the one that's going to crack the code. What I know as an enthusiast, because I'm not a technical guy, is that it's around for 10 years and nobody has done it. So that shows me the strength of it, especially when there's a lot of motives why you'd like to do it. Because if you do, is jackpot.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We touched upon the NFT space there, and a lot of people think that NFTs are images of chimps and all the fun things that we hear about in the media. But then you touched upon things like deeds and contracts and art and things like that. So that leads me on to, what does the Web3 space mean to these three groups of people? Firstly, to investors, which there is a lot of interest there from an investment point of view. I think a lot of people are looking at blockchain tech and NFT and whatnot and crypto from an investor's point of view. If I get in there early, maybe I can cash out later on because of the growth and the value. But what does it mean to investors in the future? What does it mean to normal everyday businesses? Not when we're talking about the huge brands, we'll come on to those later because I know you advise some global brands, but to the normal everyday business and to the normal everyday consumer, what does the Web3 space mean to those people in the future?
Yeah, so there's two things that are very distinct here, right? And you're breaking that down in a great manner. One is speculation, which we have seen in the crypto space forever, but specifically the last 12 months within NFT space. So there's a speculation where people were just trying to make a buck, right? So if I put my money here and there's whatever random JPEG, if people want to buy it and people think that it's going to go up in value and I take it out on the right time, I make money, right? So that's what has happened a lot until now, 2nd of August, where we got into a bear market, the so-called crypto winter, and that speculation and money making now is not as possible as it was before, and now the space is quiet, right? So there is that aspect, which, if you want to look back on time, was exactly what happened when the dot-com bubble happened, right? Right before
the hype, right?
The hype, the money making,
grab,
the VCs raising capital, crazy valuations. That's exactly what happened before, right? This is one part of it. The second part of it is that you cannot connect the technology with speculation, right? So that's something you really need to be mindful of. So you cannot say, oh yeah, now the money's not there anymore, the space is dead, right? You could have said the same about the internet. If you see in 2000s right now and there is no money anymore, all companies went bankrupt, obviously lost their money, oh, the internet's dead. So the point of your question of looking forward into the future and what does that mean for business in this space is, imagine that Web3 is the new iteration of the internet. How we will sort of like develop the internet is, per se, we're just the beginning of it, right? So we are now in mid 90s or beginning of 2000s. The bubble just happened. And everybody's like, oh yeah, like this internet thing, I knew it wouldn't go anywhere. So if you are a clever businessman right now, what you're doing is you're going deeper into the space, not investing, but understanding and learning on how you can use this new medium and this new space now to connect and communicate and tell stories and sell products, develop, grow your business with a new medium on which you can be part of. So there are three things that are really interesting for me within Web3. That's my corner. For sure, there's many others, but three things for me which are really exciting is, 1, NFTs, 2, Metaverse, and 3, cryptocurrencies as a payment method, right? So if you want to look to your point, what is so interesting about NFTs for business owners right now? Now you have digital ownership, which is an incredible new way on how you can connect with consumers, right? So through that, you can issue an NFT for fundraising, for example, to build a business from scratch or to get people around your brand, which is interesting. You can now find new types of consumers, because those people that are interested in the space, because we are very early, are a very specific type of consumer that can give you a lot of insights on what the trend is and where this is headed, right? So there is a new way for you to tap into new audiences. And there's a third way, which is creating a new revenue streams. So NFTs can and will be a very interesting way of creating new revenue streams for your business. Think about it. Before NFTs existed, especially in art, which was a major sort of like use case within the space, artists were dying poor, right? Starving to death. So think about Picasso, Da Vinci, the greatest artists in history have died miserable because they couldn't monetize their work. Now, what we are seeing with NFTs is one, they can, because now there is a way to do it. Beeple is a great example, sold his artwork for $69 million. The second thing is not just about the amount of money you're selling it for. The second thing, which is interesting, is royalties, which are in perpetuity written on the blockchain through NFTs. So every time that piece of work that Beeple has done and sold for $69 million is being sold further down the line, which will happen eventually, Beeple is taking a cut. So that's what is so exciting about it, because that didn't happen before. Like the person that
wasn't possible, right?
Exactly. The person that has bought Picasso firsthand might have paid little money and then sold to someone after, that sold to someone after, that sold to someone after. A lot of people have been making millions between those transactions, but his family, his legacy, himself, it's zero.
Yeah.
And that's what's exciting. And now if you get that now you understand better and apply to your business, is exactly the same thing. Imagine about membership programs, imagine about digital products, imagine about ticketing. Ticketing industry is huge. And what happens is you buy a ticket, you pay for it, and if I sell to you, because, I couldn't go to that concert, now I sell to you, the ticketing company is not making money. I'm making money, or maybe I'm breaking even because you want to get rid of it. But if that will be on chain, if that will be an NFT, now when I sold to you, the company that issued that ticket is taking a royalty cut. And that can happen 100 times, right? Because if I'm a collector and you've been to Woodstock, and I would love to have that ticket from Woodstock where you attended as a collector because they value that, whatever. Now, when you sold to me, the company is taking a cut. So that's what's interesting within the space for me.
Yeah. No, that is fascinating. When you and I guess that can be applied to many things. Music, for example, is another one. That is fascinating. I can see the use case from that perspective. So from a business perspective, for everyday normal consumers, I guess it touches their lives as well. How is it going to benefit society from a consumer's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, there's several different ways, right? Which you can look at. But what I find the most interesting and the most exciting so far is, just observing human behavior. We spend exponentially more time digitally, but we still don't own anything digitally, or very few, right? When you look at data, for example, is a great example, right? Like all the time we are spending on all those siloed Web2 platforms, they're collecting our data. We got nothing from it, if not the rights of using the product. When you're a creator, for example, you build your community, you put your content out. If you're lucky enough, you can monetize that. But if YouTube changes their mind tomorrow, you're gone. Your community is gone, your revenue stream is gone, right? So now through this new technology, you have the possibility of one, creating manners on which people can own things digitally, which could be your data, right? Or it can be other things, which are an interesting factor of it, especially for creators. But also, I would love to own a lot of things online. I would love to be the owner of those things, especially my data, right? Two, you can create new ways of connecting with like-minded people. We're building communities around whatever you are passionate about or whatever you want to create. And three, there is a new way of monetizing that relationship, right? So if you're a musician, for example, and you want to launch an album, you need the permission and the blessing from the big labels if you want to be successful. And the big labels are taking 70 to 80% cut on that success, sometimes forever, sometimes for a very long period of time. Now you're flipping the model. If I produce music and you like the music I'm producing, come be part of my community, help me founding it. I drop an album, the first 100 people that buy it have the rights of taking one ownership or taking a cut every time that album is played forever in the future. I'm paying back to you because you helped me when I needed to start. Now imagine that person becomes the next Jay-Z. Now imagine that person becomes the next Beyonce. And you've been there from day one, helping them to found their career. Now you can take not advantage, but you can be part of their success. So that's what's interesting from, like a day-to-day person, where now no matter what you want to do, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's community building, whether it's a digital product, whether it's anything on that direction, now there is a medium for you to, one, foster community, but two, also find new models of revenue development.
That's fascinating. Going back to that part there, in terms of the ongoing revenue generation there and being able to track that revenue on the blockchain, that can apply to everyday businesses now, where, say, for example, you have somebody who helps you, again, and from the business point of view, that they sell something for you, and then somebody else in the distribution chain sell that ongoing. That person may only get one piece of commission, but now they can get multiple streams of revenue because there is a piece of the pie down the line, right? And it's very difficult to attribute that now, but whereas on the blockchain you are able to do that.
100%. And also one thing that I touched a lot is, as humans, we tend to try to predict the future by looking at the present. So it's really hard potential of the space, because we're thinking JPEGs, because we're thinking, oh, it's just, those images, because the mainstream media is doing a very bad job on portraying NFTs as this like fad or this kind of like problematic thing, where now there's just a lot of money trying to be made. What we need to do is to sort of like try to zoom out and look into the possibilities of what can be done through this technology now. And that's where I find exciting, because even though we spend so much time within the space, I still don't know where this is headed. I'm learning every day. The other day I talked to someone putting real estate on chain. I was like, oh, interesting. And then the other day I'm looking into this project that has bought 41,000 hectares of land in the middle of the Amazon forest and is using that new technology now to foster community around, to protect and sustain the area. I'm like, oh, interesting. And then I'm talking to someone has bought a team in the UK and wants to make that football team the first sort of like internet team, where fans can decide who is the next player they're gonna acquire for the team. Fans can decide how the uniform is gonna be designed and all of it. I'm like, interesting. So I'm talking to airline companies and aviation companies, and like, oh, we want to do our membership program now through NFTs because we see the value of having that on chain, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, interesting. So you start seeing the possibilities, which are unlimited right now. There's a lot of harsh shit to it as well, right? There's a lot of people trying to force technology where it's not needed, but there's a lot of use case that I'm just like listening to and getting deeper into, and seeing like big major corporations, governments, and all those type of like very high up organizations being interested on using this technology in a different manner. So if there is a call to action for the audience, is literally digging deeper into the possibilities, because we're just seeing the beginning of it.
So you mentioned governments there, which is really interesting, because blockchain technology is decentralized. So nobody owns it fully. Nobody owns it 100%. But is it always going to be 100% decentralized? Our governments, our big governing bodies and regulatory bodies, trying to figure out how to rein it in and control it? And is it always going to be 100% decentralized?
I'm not naive to say that we are at full decentralization just now. I don't think we do, especially when you start looking into Bitcoin, and I don't want to sort of like go too much in that direction, but a lot of Bitcoin is owned by major players that are miners or that are big corporation, big investors behind the scenes. So you could argue that as soon as a certain percentage of a special token is owned by very few players, decentralization is gone, because they can take decisions, that they can make things happen. And as a miner, for example, you can decide not mining a certain block just because you can. So I don't think we are there, because again, it's very early. We're talking 10 years, and yes, 10 years could sound like a lot of time, but not for the level of disruption that we are looking with this technology. But I think we will eventually get there as we foster, develop, get more mature, and go more with time towards that direction. Will that always be decentralized? Of course not. There is no interest from governments and big organizations to fully decentralize that, because losing control is what makes them lose power, and losing power makes them obsolete, right? But what I understand and what I think looking for from here to the future is that we're going to have like almost like a hybrid model where, yes, we're going to have centralized, closed blockchain technologies that are used by government operations to sort of like empower at the back end and do something that they don't want anybody to look into, but the technology is interesting because it's immutable and is a larger technology. You're going to have a hybrid situation where you have certain aspects of centralization, but certain aspects of decentralization. And you're going to have like a full decentralized space where if you really want to be within that sphere, it's going to be possible and it's going to exist. So I don't think it's going to be like black and white. I think it's going to be sort of like space for everyone to play within that sphere.
Yeah, lots of variables at play here. So it's lots of people trying to figure out and control the situation. So you've kind of already answered this, but I think we need to ask the question: Are NFTs a pyramid scheme? There's a common misconception here where NFTs are considered, and you've answered this kind of with the whole speculation piece, that a lot of people are looking at it from a speculation point of view rather than a intrinsic practical way that things can be structured and organized and tracked. But are NFTs just a pyramid scheme?
Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing because we do an extremely poor job as early adopters of this technology to make people from outside don't think it is, because a lot of the things we do sound pretty much like it, especially on the speculation side, especially on the stupid amount of money that is put behind the stupid type of projects that are built out there. So I understand, I feel it. But again, for me, and I think that's what you mean, I already answered that, is you got to dig deeper and look into the use case and look into the possibilities. For me, there are two key factors that are going to help people understand it better. One is education, and two are use cases, right? So get educated on the possibilities of NFTs, not about what is the mainstream media pushing, or not just about the PFP collections, but as I said, the other possibilities of what brands or what creators are doing that are not connected to money making or to speculation. And the second thing is use case, right? It's trying to understand which use case are possible. What could I do with that for my business? How could my business take advantage of that, excluding the speculation factor of it? I bought it now, I'm expecting it to go up in value, right? How can I use this as a new medium to tell stories? So here's the framework I love using to understand where we are headed from a cultural and sort of like human behavior point of view. I look into the past, because what happens next is what happened before. Always like that. So think about medium. I love looking into blockchain, NFT, and metaverse as a new medium, especially to tell stories, especially to connect with people, right? Because my brain is marketing, my brain is branding, my brain is people. So that's kind of like where the box they operate. So if you look at the evolution of print or TV or radio, those were new mediums that enabled people to communicate, connect, and tell stories in a manner that wasn't possible before. And they changed the course of humanity, right? Then we had the same pattern for the internet, with e-commerce, and with social media. Same pattern. Change the way we connect, change the way we tell stories, and change the way we engage as humans. Now the same thing's happening with NFTs. The same thing's happening with the metaverse. The same thing's happening with blockchain technology. Look at that as a new medium on which you as an individual, you as a creator, you as a brand, you as a business owner can now use this medium to tell stories, to connect, and to engage with your audience. Now, when you look from those lenses, does that sound like a pyramid scheme, or just sounds like a new medium on which you can now to either foster and grow your business, or to create and be rewarded by your creation, or just to connect with like-minded people? That's kind of like what I'm seeing. As soon as you take that like speculation layer off, there is so much behind it.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. You mentioned very briefly there the metaverse. Let's dive into that now in terms of the metaverse, because you call yourself a metaverse native. Let's cover that for a minute there. For the people who I'm sure everybody has heard, let's just cover what the metaverse is to start with.
The metaverse has a billion of different definitions. Mine is that the metaverse is a new evolution of how we connect digitally as humans. It's a new user experience evolution. The way we connect now through boxes on Zooms, calls or Teams or whatever, it's far beyond the way that we would connect in person, the way we would engage in person, the way we would communicate in person. It doesn't feel personal. I don't feel as connected with you as I would be if we'd be sitting in the same room right now.
Sure.
And for me, the metaverse comes to enhance that possibility of connection, to make it better. to make it feel more like we will be sitting in the same room. That's why the three-dimensional aspect is interesting. That's why, we can engage with items around us is interesting. That's why attending to a concert digitally will feel much more enticing than just looking at a flat screen and like being passively there, sitting, watching it. And for me, that's what a metaverse is. It's just an evolution on how we connect as humans digitally. Now you can break that down into a billion of different directions. But if you want to look at from very, very helicopter view, that's what I think is so interesting about it.
So the metaverse is a 3D digital world in which we can connect and connect to other people with.
Yeah, it's a digital world. I think if you want to put that into words, that's exactly what it is.
Sure. And who are the players? I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of stuff in the media with Facebook, with their metaverse. Who are the players here? Who are the big players here who are really trying to invest in, not talking about the speculation piece in terms of the residents, as it were,
builders,
but the people who are creating these worlds?
Yeah, I mean, the builders, we can definitely see the patterns, right? And obviously the whole Meta situation is where brought us where we are right now, where they changed their company name and they changed their sort of like vision, and
they've gone all in on this, right?
They've gone all in on this, yeah. Especially when it comes to changing the entire way they operate and who they want to be perceived as a brand. That's major, right? So obviously Meta has been the one that took most of the attention, but Microsoft has been looking into that for a while as well. I think there's three different ways to look into it. There is gaming, because a lot of people think the metaverse is just gaming, and I just want to sort of like acknowledge that from get-go. So you have gaming platforms that are now being used either as metaverse platforms or that have been within the gaming space for a long time, that being Fortnite, that being Roblox, that being Minecraft. Those are gaming platforms.
It's an obvious use case, right? Yeah.
Obvious use case, gaming platform. Difference is that they're a closed, centralized, per se, platform where one, the brand dictates or the platform dictates what can and what cannot happen, and two, there is no interoperability on it, meaning you cannot take an item from Roblox and now bring to Minecraft. You cannot take an item from Minecraft and now bring to Fortnite. So those are two core aspects of that space. But let's don't get confused and think that metaverse is just gaming, because gaming is one of the big, so far, use case for metaverse, but in years is going to be just one of few. Right? Because you go there for game, you go there to have fun, you go there to play quests or to play any type of like things that you're interested in with others, which we've been seeing through the gaming industry. The second aspect and the second big players are the centralized corporations that are pushing the metaverse and shaping it based on whatever agenda they want to push. So if you ask Meta what the metaverse is a social hub, right? Because it's convenient, because Facebook, Instagram, those are social hubs. Right? So they're looking from a way that people can connect online, right? Bringing people together has always been their mission and vision. So they are pushing that to be a social hub, but also pushing VR, right? If you look at Oculus and all of that, that's their agenda. We have this hardware, we bought this company, we developed that. The metaverse is going to be VR, which I personally don't think it is. I think the metaverse is going to be, it has to be accessible from any device. It has to be accessible from the phone. It has to be accessible from AR or glasses or lenses whenever we get there from a hardware point of view. And it has to be accessible through the browser. But also should be possible to be accessed by virtual reality and whatever is going to come next, right? So I don't think it's one only, especially because if you've tried VR for long enough, a nightmare to be with like glasses longer than 1 or 2 hours. So I don't think that the same adoption we see with this, which is much easier for us to be, kind of like looking at it, is going to happen through VR. So the misconception here is, one, is not just VR, right? I think it's going to be much wider, and it is already much more than that. And two, Meta doesn't own the metaverse. Right? Meta is
I'm glad you said that, because I think there's an important distinction there, that actually Meta is synonymous with metaverse, but what you're saying here is not.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. They will be one of the major players because they're well positioned to be so. Doesn't mean that they will own the whole thing, right? Also, then you have within that space, which is centralized, major corporations trying to push their agenda, is Microsoft, right? So they're looking to the metaverse as a way on how we're gonna work, the new way of working. Obviously, because that suits their agenda of selling whatever cloud systems that are empowering working and corporates around the world. Right, so that's where they're looking from. Those are sort of like two major players that have been obviously building within that space, that have a very clear agenda now on what they want the metaverse to be. Now you have the third pillar, which are more sort of like the quote unquote decentralized, the quote unquote Web3 metaverses, where, you know, again, still in super early stage, but those companies, for example, Sandbox, Decentraland, Spatial, other companies within that space, they're trying to build now decentralized metaverse, meaning there is power to the user, right? There is interoperability. There are ways on which the users can decide how that thing is going to evolve. Decentraland is a good example because they are a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization that takes decisions and sort of like rules that space and its development, but then they have still, you know, a team on top of that as a foundation that is sort of like executing the day-to-day. I think looking into centralized, decentralized, hybrid is exactly what we just talked about blockchain.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be exactly the same, right? You're going to need the places that are extremely strict, extremely centralized, for example, for working. I wouldn't imagine a Fortune 50 company having all their files, all their workers, all their information on an extremely decentralized platform where everybody can have access to it, right? So centralization makes sense here, and it should exist because it's connected to privacy and security, right? Now, if you want to go a little bit to the side, you can have some aspects of decentralization and centralization, which sort of like gives incentives to the user to be part of it, but it's not fully decentralized because it's not necessarily needed for that. But at the same time, you're going to have like extremely decentralized, anarchy-like space, which also is needed for us to push the boundaries and understand and do whatever we want to do within the space. So that's kind of like how I'm seeing from the players and from the sort of like framework around it. But to finish it up, one thing that, you know, it's something I always say is we will have several different metaverse and several different identities. And that's something to keep in mind. Again, look at the past. How many social medias exist out there? I'm in 5 or 6 of them, right? I'm TikTok, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, all of those. Each of those platforms fill a different purpose. You are not the same person on LinkedIn that you are on TikTok. And you have different identities already. The way you talk, the way you behave, the way you portray yourself. Absolutely different. The stories you put on Instagram are not the same stories you're putting on LinkedIn. And each of them fulfill a different purpose. And so will be the metaverse. Each metaverse that will exist in different manners and different ways is going to have its unique selling proposition that are going to make people want to go there because they can get that. And whoever tried to like, is the place for you to do it all, I think that's where they're going to fail. I think there won't be a place to do it all because Instagram is much cooler than LinkedIn, and LinkedIn could not be Instagram, and so Instagram couldn't be LinkedIn. Right? And now when you start talking about identity, I love that quote that says, people will come to the metaverse because of what they can do, but they're going to stay because of who they can be, right? And that's when we start talking about identity. Now, as we have been doing before, we had different identities and different behaviors based on the platform we are putting ourselves on. Now you start looking to anonymity. You start looking, you can be whoever you want. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter how you speak, doesn't matter how you look like, doesn't matter your social background, doesn't matter your religion or beliefs. You can be whoever the fuck you want. And that's what's exciting about this place, because anonymity frees identity. So by being anon, you can be whoever you want because there is no preconcept, there is no prejudgment of who you are. And I think this is going to be especially important for the upcoming generation, where there is a space now that they can be whoever they want, whoever they identify with.
So we talk about identities for individuals here, and the metaverse gives them the opportunity to become whoever they want and frees up that potential. Let's talk about brands. Let's talk about businesses. So you are an advisor to some big global brands. Tell me about your work with them. What's your role in Web3? What are you trying to do with the advisory roles? How are you trying to change the world and educate on these topics?
Yeah, so my personal mission within the space is to accelerate mass adoption of blockchain technology and NFTs. That's what I set myself for. And a lot of people are like, oh, why do you work with the big brands? One is such an exciting, innovative space. Why are not just like working with the Web3 native? Because those are the one pushing the envelope. Those are the one shaping the future. And what people don't get right sometimes from a mentality point of view is that the big brands are the platforms that if they do right, they're going to bring their entire consumer base with them. And if they do right, all other brands want to do it too. That happened with Adidas, right? When Adidas did what Adidas did in December last year, every brand looked at it like, oh my God, we need
Tell
to
me
figure
about
out
it.
this thing.
For the audience who don't know, tell us about that. What happened?
Yeah, so Adidas has launched a partnership last year in December with three of the most prominent projects in the space: CryptoPunks through G Money, Bored Ape, right, and Pixel Vault through Punks Comic. So Adidas got together with those three brands, put their brand alongside, went community first, bought a Bored Ape, did a collection of a hoodie, a tracksuit, and a beanie where people could claim the physical item if you on the actual NFT. And the brand raised 23 million in 24 hours.
Wow.
Right. So when that happened, everybody was like, oh my God, like there's a new revenue stream. There's a new way to make money. 23 million in 24 hours. Everybody was really, pushing that. And as I was part of the team that has helped bring that to life, internally I was looking at it. I was like, no, that's not the major success aspect here. The success aspect was we launched 30,000 NFTs and we had around 21,000 unique holders. Now, you can argue that some people have 2, 3, 4, 5 wallets, doesn't matter, but let's assume that we had 21,000 unique holders. Now you have an entire new community to foster. Now you have an entire new community to build together. Now you have an entire new community in a very specific space where we are extremely early, and the trends are showing that is not slowing down, is rather accelerating, that you can understand better from and build your brand and co-create with. That's where the real value is at, not the 23 million, right? Adidas as a brand makes 24 billion in revenue a year. 23 million is nothing. Now,
Ocean, yeah.
those like 20,000 people that now you can connect with, you can understand how you can co-create the future of the brand together with. That's what's exciting. So, like that's kind of like the things that when I'm working with the brands, and going back to your question, I try to sort of like, one, show what I have seen, and two, get them to think bigger. Because a lot of times what I say is like, you are in the mid-90s right now trying to make a quick buck with the internet. We are in 2022 right now, and you still don't know the full potential of the internet, right? So how can you use your brand as a platform? How can you build community around your brand? How can you use your brand in a way that we can potentially change the world for better? How you can support causes and use this technology now to get people to be part of the cause you want to support, and sort of like huddle around it, and use storytelling as a manner to enhance brand equity as well. So that's one side of what I always try to do, which is kind of like show the bigger spectrum of it, show the ways that they can use that more than just like a collectible NFT or whatever that they want to do just because they have no idea what to do with it. But also showing, especially for the marketing departments, that now is the first time in history that marketing has the possibility of leaving that cost center space where marketing is to become a value center, right? A value center where, one, you can now bring revenue by doing things right within the space. Example, what Adidas done. Two, you can build brand equity by positioning yourself at the edge of technology and being perceived as a cool brand. Gucci is doing that really well, right? And three, you can tap into new communities and a new consumer base to understand how they think, so you can scale that thinking up, because whenever people are ready to come in, the mentality is going to be the same.
That's for the big brands. What if you're, and it makes total sense, what if you are not a big brand? What if you are an everyday business trying to understand where the potential of Web3, the Metaverse, and everything that surrounds it? What do you say to those businesses, those businesses that are lower down the chain in terms of their budgets and marketing? How can they capitalize on this new Web3 world?
Yeah, I think there's not like a clear distinction between what the major brands can do and what the small business can do. The difference is the impact, right? You probably wouldn't be able to partner with those brands that Adidas partner and make 23 mil in 24 hours because you don't have that massive as a platform. Sure. But you can look on what they've done as a blueprint and scale that down to something that makes sense to your brand. So let's say you were a small music label from the UK, for example, and you can look into the space, which projects or which communities are within your target audience, or sort of like the target group you want to speak with or connect with, and how you can connect with them, how you can partner, how you can learn from them, how you can start building things together, how you can start using a small budget part of your organization in order to start going towards the direction, experimenting. I think that the key word right now is experimentation. It's trying to do something, doesn't have to be major, doesn't have to be really impactful, but trying to do something to experiment. Don't try to go for the money. Don't try to, oh no, we're going to do this thing now because it's a new revenue driver. Again, you're trying to make a quick buck in the mid-90s. Try to experiment this new internet thing. Bezos went there and decided that selling books on the internet was a good idea. Everybody told him that he was full of shit. Amazon is one of the biggest companies in the world right now. So he was trying to experiment a new medium and a new way to do something that we've been doing before, selling books. Now he's doing that online. And now after selling books has proved as a use case, now he went to sell everything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that mentality is applicable as well for a smaller business, which is then connected to just like try something small, experiment, try to learn more. And what I have seen as a pattern within major organizations that can be replicated for a small business is there is always that one person, the Trojan horse, the anon that has been inside the space already and now is within those major organizations trying to push it. Figure out who that person is. Figure out who has already experimented with it. Who is the one that's like itching to do something but doesn't know where to start or doesn't have support or doesn't have someone to say, hey, you understand a little bit about that? You want to come here and give a talk? You want to tell us what you have seen? Like that is the way that it starts in any organization. At Adidas was exactly the same.
And being open to it. And being open to it.
Exactly. Be open to it. Yeah. Let's experiment. Let's try out. Let's don't go crazy for the cash grab. Let's don't invest a lot of money. Let's literally just learn from it. Let's literally try out. Let's find a community that we feel we can tap in, that we can learn from, that we can build with, that we can add value instead of extracting. Yeah, that's a very important thing. And the ones that do it right now, the ones that really understand, the ones that position themselves right, are the ones that are going to win 5-10 years from now.
Yeah, sure. They're looking into the future. So to finish off, there's so much to explore. I mean, my mind is blown at the moment, which is fascinating, and I can't wait to share with my team our chat today. For those who want to learn more, understand, the capabilities and the possibilities of Web3, the Metaverse, NFTs, blockchain, you have a course, which we'll put a link somewhere around here. Tell us about the course. Where is it? What can people expect from it? And what's the takeaway from it? Sure. So I partner with Nas Academy, which is a creator platform. Really cool guys. They've been creating content forever. They're really good at creating content, and that's what I needed. So we've done this course, which is called How Brands Should Enter the Metaverse and the NFT Space, where I get everything I know, everything I've learned through experience, not listening to podcasts, not reading articles, to stuff I've done and projects I've been part of. And I apply those learnings and the things I've seen throughout my journey into that masterclass. So I literally got everything I knew, dumped into that thing, structured in 7 different modules, 1.5 hours a day, 10 hours worth of content, where I also interviewed, I think about 10 people now, because I keep interviewing and adding to the course because I keep finding exciting people. But I interview a bunch of people from Unilever, from Salesforce, from Volkswagen, from Shell, from native Web3 companies that are building the space. I interview lawyers. I interview people from agencies, major agencies around the world that are working in different manners within the space, have seen something and went straight in and are building the future, right? So not just what I experience and what I'm teaching you, but also what other people from different scale, right? From Unilever, which is one of the largest companies in the world, to someone that has building a sustainable social impact project deep in the Amazon forest in Brazil. So we go from those axes, right? Extremes. And the third thing is the community. Funny enough, right? So what I have seen, we just finished the first wave, and it's mind-blowing how much people are connecting. So people are like, I want to launch a project. Oh, I'm an art director, or I'm an artist, or I'm a marketing lead. And people just want to connect, learn from each other, exchange. People were setting up on the side meetings without we even knowing, without we even like being part of it, because they want to get together. So that networking effect and community effect is insane. At the end of the course, you get to pitch your idea to me and to your classmates, and we give feedback. And meanwhile, you're pitching, people are on the chat like, hey, I should connect you with that person. Hey, you want to talk with me? I have some idea that can help. And I'm there just trying to add value as we go. So that's kind of like the space we're creating. We just run the first wave. We learn a lot. And now we're going to improve much better for the second one as well, which is starting the 10th of September. So, if you're interested, nasacademy.com/Diego, that's where you learn more from it. And yeah, that's basically it. It was another pillar for me to pay back into my mission of accelerating the mass adoption of the space. That's fascinating. So I'll put a link in wherever we're posting this so people can find it. Diego, it's been absolutely fascinating chatting to you. I've learned so much. My mind is absolutely blown on the opportunities and where the future could be. Glad you've actually labeled it speculation and the practicalities of where the technology can possibly be. I'm sure our audience are going to find lots of nuggets in here to take away and to think about, and where the opportunity is for their own businesses as well. So thank you for taking the time to speak to us today.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate you.
Thank you. All the best.